What is the kingdom of darkness, and how do we plug into it? This ripple effect, like in a pond, and also like the tree rings in a tree, there are 18 circles represented here. In the center of the circle is the eye of, in this case, it's the eye of Satan. You have Satan on the right-hand side and the Antichrist, which is the son of Satan, which is a physical person that's supposed to be coming on the scene in the future, counterfeit of Jesus from the past, and the false prophet, which is the church that's worshiping idol gods. And Jezebel is the bride of Satan, basically the queen of the false churches and the false prophet, and is opposite of the Holy Spirit. So in the center of the circle, the eye of Satan represents how Satan sees the world. And after all, Satan is in charge of our system, and he's the god of this world. Okay, the first one on here is adultery. Satan uses adultery in human marriages. He uses adultery in work relationship, family relationships. He uses adultery in churches. Now, if you've been in a marriage where you've experienced adultery, the narcissist or the Satanist that you're with has tapped into adultery, either physically through adultery with another person and has a mistress, or through pornography, or through some other method whereby you are not the love of his life. He loves something and or someone else. Adultery can also be expressed in when you go to a church that's idly worshiping Easter and Christmas. You are not worshiping the Most High God. You are worshiping pagan gods, and that's considered spiritual adultery. When the Satanists plug into this grid, they get a short-term power source. So they get a temporary satisfaction, or they might get power, and they might get prestige, and they might get authority, and they might even get money. And they may even, the most important thing to a narcissist Satanist is control. So when they plug into adultery, they start to control you. If you're in a marriage, they start to control you by making you get jealous or discarding you. They have the upper hand because they're in control. Number 2, fornication. Pretty obvious. If you're not evenly yoked and have a relationship with God, and you don't know how to love God, and you're in a relationship where you're physical with someone, you're unevenly yoked, then it's called fornication. Being in infidelity is fornication. Pornography is fornication. Dating multiple people and never getting married is fornication. Serial dating. Or being married multiple times, sometimes 8 to 10 times. Fornication is not something for recreational uses. For me, it is for if you really love someone and you want to have a child with that person. And fornication is when you don't love one another because you don't love God and God doesn't love you. Uncleanness. I think that can be cursing, using Jesus' name in vain as a swear word, or just being unclean in your words. Talking about gross, disgusting things that just make people sick. Lewdness. Again, just being vulgar and perverted with a thing. When a narcissist Satanist taps into idolatry. Now, idolatry of the mind can occur, intellectual, idolatry of a human, idolatry of their sexuality, idolatry of, how many women can they get, idolatry of how many women can they take from other men, that kind of a thing. And idolatry when it comes to God. People that are not worshiping the Most High God are worshiping the pagan gods. And the pagan gods are those churches that are worshiping Christmas and Easter. And most people don't even really realize what they're doing, but those are pagan gods, and that's idolatry. And our world is set up for idolatry because the world that we live in is being run by little g God. So idolatry is literally his middle name. Idolatry of money, idolatry of materialism, idolatry of being better than other people, idolatry of competition, idolatry in corporations, where you're always pushed and pushed and pushed to make more and more money. Then we have sorcery, which is also witchcraft. Sorcery is the opposite of Holy Spirit, and it's the thing that witches and warlocks and Satanists do when they tap into the pagan gods, the fallen angels, the demons, and they get what they want because of spells or chants or love spells. They shouldn't get what they're getting by natural means because they take away self-will. They use witchcraft. If you go to court against a narcissist and they're guilty and you're innocent, they will use witchcraft to sway the judge against you, and you lose in court, and you are the innocent spouse. Hatred. Listen to the words that your narcissist says. Usually they don't like people. Oh, I hate that person, or I'm having road rage, or I hate the sound of that person, or they're making fun. When a narcissist brings up from the past an ex-mistress that he had, or compares you sexually to an ex-mistress or a current girl that you somewhat know, that's considered hatred. Narcissists and Satanists love hatred. Hatred is the system that we live in. It is what they plug into. They don't know love because they don't know God. They are plugged into hatred. Contentions. Jezebelic, narcissistic people love contentions. Contempt prior to investigation. They love to judge people. They love to smear campaign. They love to gossip. They love to talk bad about people. If I'm talking bad about you, then I must be better than you, because if you're mentally ill, then I must not be mentally ill. And it induces competition. And also the way I look at it is, you're going to put someone down. It's not going to benefit anybody, including not the person that you're putting down, because it's not going to make them change their behavior. Contention can lead to being very judgmental of people. People can say they're putting up boundaries or they're being super picky. And in some instances, you have to have some good, healthy boundaries when you're dealing with a Satanist. But sometimes we can live in contempt and self-condemnation, not only of ourselves, but then when people just don't measure up to the perfection stick that we give them, then we get to hate them and contempt them because they're not perfect like we want them to be. But first of all, we're not perfect. But this is Satan's world. Jealousies. Satanists, narcissists are always jealous. They're never happy. They don't feel love. They're contentious. They contempt themselves. They judge themselves. They condemn themselves. They're jealous of you because you are allowed to be happy, because if you're tapping into the kingdom of light, which I'll talk to you about later, they're jealous. Outbursts of wrath. Narcissist Satanists love outbursts of wrath, but sometimes you don't always know when it's warranted. That's what they call a narcissistic injury. So anytime you hurt them, like anytime they lose control of you. So in my case, if I want to go to the store without telling my narcissist I'm leaving, he will have outbursts of wrath because he's lost control of me for 30 minutes. But this is the kingdom of darkness. This is how they function, and this is how they think. Outbursts of wrath. It's definitely not happy, joyous, and free when you're in retaliation mode. Selfish ambitions. Narcissist Satanists only do anything for anybody else or themselves when it benefits themselves. And it's through selfish ambitions. They play games with you, they play games with others, and it's always to serve their best interest or some future goal. Dissensions. Basically, this induces competition. When people pit you against other people, or they measure you up against other people, it creates competition. Have you ever gone to a family function or a holiday event and felt like you just don't measure up? This is dissensions. We see this right now in politics, the Republicans and the Democrats. There's dissensions, there's race dissensions, there's sex dissensions between men and women. And as long as we're fighting each other and pitted against one another, we can't be in peace. Again, the devil doesn't want us to be in agreement because he knows how much power then when you link into God's system, God's heaven, through love and agreement, you have so much more power over him. But as long as he can keep everyone that on the earth in dissension and hating one another, it benefits his kingdom. Heresies represent smear campaigns or the lies that the narcissist Satanist tells others, or when the narcissist and the Satanist is always a victim. And so therefore, just like they persecuted Jesus for his innocence, they made him a scapegoat and made him a victim, like the narcissists will do to the people that are closest to them. And they commit heresies when they smear campaign or they triangulate other people under their deceptions, or they produce character assassination against you so that the Satanist narcissist is a victim, which is a satanic system, and you, the victim, is actually the perpetrator. Envy. Satanists are envious of God's people because they can't have what God has. They disconnected from the light. Satanists murder. They murder through abortion. They murder through witchcraft. They murder through suicide. They murder through drug overdoses. They murder through homicide. They murder through outbursts of wrath. They murder through accidents. The world that they live in, they introduced death and murder. They introduced pestilence. They introduced cancer. They introduced infirmity of all kinds. They introduced all the negative physical things that can happen to you. They introduced inflammation. They introduced murder into the human system because that is the kingdom of darkness. And drunkenness. When you are drunk or high or under the influence, the demons have free reign to do whatever they want, to whoever they want, however they want. You lose control of your senses. Rivalries. Satanist narcissists like to create rivalries. Again, this is about competition, about pitting people against one another, about not measuring up. Remember, Satan is the accuser. He goes to the throne of God day and night, and he points to God and says, look at your beloved creation. Look at all the bad that they're doing. And he creates a rivalry, a competition between the good and the bad. Basically, we can never be good enough in God's eyes, so God cannot love us. As long as Satan can make us believe that we never measure up and we all rivalries against God, because remember, Satan is the enemy of God. So if he can make us believe that we are the enemy of God, which we are when we align with the idol-worshiping gods of the system of things. And the last one is deception. Basically, the lie is the invention of the kingdom of darkness. The energy of Satan flows counterclockwise. So you'll often see spirals. And if you think about it, if you look at the money symbol, it's actually a spiral. And our DNA is a spiral. So you can see from all these circles, it's a counterclockwise spiral. It represents the system of the kingdom of darkness. Basically, hell means the absence of God. All of the works of the flesh that are in this system diagram represents literally the living hell. And if those of you that are in a relationship with a narcissist Satanist or work with Satanist and narcissist at work, you understand that you are living on hell on earth because these things represent the absence of God. These things are the works of the flesh. They are the means by which the narcissist Satanists get their power, but it's not real power. Satanists don't achieve real power through this system. They may, have a little reptile grin of happiness, of satisfaction when they're knowing that they're cheating on you, or when they're embezzling all your money, or they're stealing everything you've got, or they're destroying your livelihood, and they're destroying your character. They get a satisfaction out of it, but it's more of a competition. They think they're winning. Because in the system that we live in, the world that we live in rewards them for their bad behavior. But we actually living in a system of the kingdom of darkness, not the system of God.